In NanoCAD, you can use the circle tool to draw the circle in 3 ways. The first way is by radius. You set the radius of your circle. Now the second way, if you hold the tool, all of the selections will pop out. The second way is by diameter. And then the third way is called circle by 3 points. I should draw a quick example of this. Let's say you have a pipe here at any width. And you want to cover this gap with this circle. You can do it by diameter, or you can use circle by 3 points. So where I set the first 2 points, that's where the circle will cross and touch, no matter how big it is. So this could be useful to a drafter. The next tool is a polyline. The polyline is just, so if you use a normal line tool and you draw a bunch of lines, then each of the lines is a separate entity, which can be clicked one by one. But if you draw with a polyline, it's counted as one object. Now the rectangle tool is quite cool. It's not your usual rectangle tool. So if you take the normal rectangle, the rectangle by 2 points, it will just draw your standard rectangle there. But let's say I want to draw a rectangle at an angle, for example. I want the first side to be angled like this. Well, you come to use the rectangle by 3 points. So first you set the angle that you want to be in, and then you can set how far it stretches. Next is the polygon tool, and when you select this tool, it asks a series of questions down here. So first we want to enter the number of sides. Let's say 7. Now we specify the center of the polygon. So we can click here, for example. And now it gives us an option to choose inscribed or circumscribed. Inscribed means it will fit inside the circle. Circumscribed means it will fit outside of the circle. So I'll show you. Inscribed. If I click to any point on the circumference of the circle, it'll connect to the inside of the circle. However, if I choose 7 sides again and specify the center of the circle and then choose circumscribed, when I go to the edge of the circumference now, it will set around the circle. Also, when you specify the edge of the polygon, it will snap from the vertex of the polygon. Now we're moving on to arcs. So the first arc tool is to do with circle chords. So to understand this better, if I draw a square 100 millimeters, so 100 millimeters square, and I take the arc tool. Now let's say I want to draw an arc around this square, which touches all the corners of the square, but doesn't connect from this corner to this corner. So if I select the start point, the end point, and then I move around to this corner, there we have our arc, which touches all the corners, and this can even work for rectangles. So if I choose the arc tool, I set my first 2 points, I can bring it around and it will touch all the corners. This tool can be useful for drawing things like spanners. So if I was to draw a spanner shape, for example, if I set an arc here and make it a bit higher, Then I can trim these away. You get sort of a spanner shape, just needs refining. The second arc tool is like a real life compass. So if I just set some lines here quickly. So I've set a line here, and if I hold this down and select the second tool, then I can click the center, the edge, and draw to the top like this. It works like a compass. Now there's just some strange things about this tool which you need to know. It's probably unlikely, but you might have a door angled like this, unusually. Now if I take the compass arc, which is called arc by angle, and if I try to set it like this, now I have to hover the guideline of the tool vertically, and it'll snap right there. I can't snap exactly there because it'll go past the line. So if I hover it vertically, then it'll join. Okay, so here's 4 new lines for understanding the door arc, or the compass arc as I like to call it. So you can draw the first arc like this, nice and easy. The second arc will be drawn like this. So you snap to the bottom here, go to the top, and then you snap right back at the top. You always have to hover it vertically for some reason. So if I start from here, I have to hover it vertically. And for the last one, you can pause the video and make a test for yourself. Where should I start from? I'll start from here, set it to the end, and hover it vertically. Now the third arc is like drawing a circle, but you determine the segment of the circle before setting the size. It's better to show you. So if I select the third tool and I draw a normal arc like we did here, so that will set the segment of the arc. Now I get to determine the size of the arc. So if I just go along my door line here, if I hover to the left, it'll draw the circle segment this way. And if I hover to the right, it'll draw the circle segment this way. So the next tool we're going to look at is called the ellipse, or the ellipse arc. We place the center and we determine the radius of the ellipse, and then the vertical diameter. With the second ellipse tool, we set the diameter, then the vertical diameter. So set the diameter horizontally, and then vertically. And the third ellipse tool sets a horizontal diameter and a vertical diameter, and then the line trim determination. So you get to choose how much of an arc you want. You can copy these around by CO, click and just copy them around multiple times. We can copy like this, or we can use the array tool. So let's try the array tool. So if you highlight the object and type array, down on the keyboard and select array, here we control how we want the array to work. So you can set how many rows you want, and you have a preview on the right here to show you what your array is going to look like. With the rectangular array set, you can set the array numerically, or you can use these tools here to move the objects manually. I can set how far apart I want these. This requires a bit of play. This means there's going to be 100 millimeters between the center point of each arrayed component. So I'll keep this at 0 for now and hit OK. And then I can dim to see how far it's gone. $100mm. I can set the angle of the array too. So if I hit 45, and I'll change this row to 2, columns to 7, and the distance between the columns I want it to be 20. And the distance between the rows I want it to be 75. And OK. Now if I take this and we're going to try to do a polar array now. You can play with these tools here if you want to do things manually. For example, if I have a rectangle, so I want it to array along each segment of the rectangle, I can take this array and I can set it by myself. From here to here, and the number will be set there. I can choose one row. We only need 3 of them. And hit OK. There it is. We'll try doing a polar array now, which is going to look nice. So if you click the polar array, it's a good thing we have a preview here which shows us exactly what's going to happen to our array. You can set the center point by yourself here. I'll set it around here. And I'll choose the number to be 29. Angle to fill 360. I can lessen this and it'll only fill up that far, for example. I can either choose to have the items rotated around the circle like this, or uncheck this, and they won't rotate. So that's what we should end up with. Hit OK. So if I set the center to be here again, now I can choose one of these here. So the first one we used was the total number of items on the angle to fill. We can do the total number of items and the angle between items. Total number of items 20. The angle between items 90. So if I was to do less, then they should appear more. 75. Okay. I think it's quite straightforward to understand this. NanoCAD allows you to manipulate this however you want. Okay, now we're going to look at the trim tool. So if I draw a little rectangle here, now I don't want these lines to spill over the rectangle. So I can select the rectangle, type TR on the keyboard and enter. Then I can highlight all these lines away. So the next tool is the scale tool. Quite simple. We just highlight the object, type scale, enter, and then you click the start point. And then, for example, if you want it to be 2 times bigger, you type 2. And if you want it to be half as big, you type 0.5. Okay, now we're going to look at creating blocks, and it's good that we have some patterns here. We can turn them into blocks. So if I highlight all these lines of the pattern, I can type BL and go down to block, or I can type block and hit enter. And in this screen I just specify the properties of the block. So the name of this block, we can call it, I think it's called a Madeira cake. Madeira cake. There it is. It's this kind of shape, a Madeira cake. So we'll call it a Madeira cake. How that came back in my memory, I don't know. I just saw it in a bakery a few times and I've never even bought it. we can specify the base point of this block on screen. The center of this line is the center of the whole thing. So I'll highlight this again, and I'll unselect that center line by holding the Shift key down on the keyboard and clicking it to unselect it. And then I'll try to create the block. Ma, dear, ra, cake. Pick point. And I believe it's the center of that line. We've already specified the objects that we want by highlighting them beforehand, before activating the block command, so we don't need to do this. We're converting it to block, and we can allow exploding later. I'll explain that tool later on. Just take the block and use the explode tool to make it back to lines again. To unblock it. Description. A cake I once saw in a bakery. I never got it, but somehow I remembered its name. Okay, so now you have your fancy looking block which can copy anywhere you want. Now let's say you're in a different part of the drawing and you just want to bring this block in there without having to copy. But you shouldn't have to copy. You should be able to access the blocks library. If you go into the blocks command, blocks cmd, this is your library of blocks that you have in the project. To actually insert the block from the library, you have to press I, go down to insert block, or you can just hit I and enter. There we go. We can select the block we want from here, Madeira cake, and we can re-specify any of the insertion points and hit OK. And there you have it. To move these things around, I just highlight and press M on the keyboard, enter, and then move it around. The next tool we're going to talk about is a multi-line text. The multi-line text tool can be accessed by the T symbol here. And if you draw a box, you can write it in the box and control via text from here. Quite simple really, I don't think this needs an explanation. We can change the font from here, height. These here are Russian symbols or Russian letters because NanoCAD is a Russian software. If you hover over them, you can understand what they do. The rest is self-explanatory really. If you want it to be capitals, lowercase, capitals. You want to insert a symbol. If we want to change this font to something else, the delta symbol. Self-explanatory. Change your color here. Now what if I want to add text multiple times, but I don't want to keep setting the font, the color, the size, and the overall format of the text? Well, I can set it one time by typing ST and enter. This opens the text styles box. So that's the one we were set with in the beginning as default. We can change this. We should be able to make a new one up here. Add new style. We'll call it new font 1. Regular. We'll make the height 5. Upside down, backwards, vertical. I think these are quite straightforward to understand. They just control how the letters will appear. Now if I want to type a new text, I can just select new font from up here. And I think I'll have to change the colors myself. We can control the colors and things like that better when we talk about the layers. So next we'll talk about the explode tool, which I already explained, but you can see how it looks. Highlight your block, type explode, or you can just type the letter X on your keyboard and hit enter. And now it's back to lines. See you in part 3.